Wow. 24 months ago, folks, the Toronto Police Service started its search for the new police chief. I threw my hat in the ring for two reasons. I really believe and passionately want to serve and protect the most vulnerable, victimized, marginalized people in society. That's a personal thing. Second reason, I thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me to take on the top cop job and provide needed change in Canada's largest municipal police service. And by doing that, influence policing right across this country and right around the world. Now, some of you may know I wasn't successful in that little exercise, but I wasn't deterred, because it's not about position or rank. It's about making a difference and making a change. So I continued to serve my city and serve within the Toronto Police Service and make the best contribution I could in the circumstances that I found myself in. But about a year later, I decided that I need a bigger challenge. I needed to try to make a bigger change. I had spent 27 years trying to make change inside policing. And so I decided to leave, go to the private sector and become a partner within Deloitte, heading up their national security and justice practice, so I could make needed change from the outside of policing. Now, I'm here today to talk about policing. I'm here to tell you that we can make bigger change, needed change, and we can do it together. Policing needs to change, and there are public safety issues across this country that need different and innovative approaches to address them. There are police officers in rural communities and urban communities who are increasingly frustrated by the lack of real progress within their profession of choice. They're increasingly frustrated about their inability to serve and protect the community members in their jurisdiction. And they're increasingly frustrated to protect themselves when they go to work, emotionally and physically and psychologically. And there are community members from coast to coast to coast in this country, and within the audience that's watching us today, who are increasingly frustrated by the quality and the cost of policing, the financial and social costs of policing. And quite frankly, those people deserve to be better served, protected, and yes, respected. That's why I'm here today. I want to share with you some lessons learned, some ideas in the form of stories from 4 different parts of the world. Stories that are going to push you, push leaders in policing, in civil society, to not accept what we've been told, that change can't happen, it can't happen soon, it's too expensive, it's too difficult. Real change can happen in policing and in public safety. The first story I want to tell you about was this amazing lady, Marcia Brown, who I met in 2012. Now, those of you who are from the city of Toronto will know that in 2012, we had escalating levels of gun, gang, and drug-related violence across the city. 2 major incidents stood out. In the Eaton Centre and the busy food court, 2 gang members opened up on each other with guns. 7 people were shot, and 1 young man lost his life. A pregnant mother and a child under the age of 13 were also wounded. A few weeks later, at a sunny backyard barbecue in South Scarborough, gang members got together and opened up in a confined area. 22 people were shot, and 2 young people lost their lives. But there were other tragedies spread across the city, and some of those tragedies took place in Marcia Brown's Rexdale neighborhood. Now, Marcia is a very special person. She's actually a special education teacher. But she decided after a weekend of particularly bad violence that she needed to do something more. She challenged herself to do something different and do it with different people to accomplish different outcomes for the people in her neighborhood. She literally went out in the streets and found 15 people who were at risk to be victimized and in some cases to do victimizing themselves. She brought them into her new program called Trust 15. The outcomes of the program improve educational success, and through mentoring, improve the characters of the people in that program. Now, Marcia had an immediate impact on the lives of the people in her program, and she started to inspire the people in her neighborhood. But she couldn't do it alone, and she was very much alone at that time. That's when I got a phone call from the local police commander, Now, this gray-haired cop had been on the job for 50 years. That's 1 year for every year that I've been alive. You can figure out my age, I think. He called me to come and help him to help Marcia. We got together, we got to know Marcia, and we started to work with her to bring other people in the community towards her program. We gave her space in the local police station so she could open an office, and we provided her with administrative support. We actually both joined her new board of directors to help her raise money to grow the program. The program, 3 years later, went from 15 to 190 young people who were off the streets, in the program, and on the way to success. Marcia Brown is a courageous person, and the lessons I learned from watching her working with private sector leaders, the local police, and other members of her community inspired me. It inspired me to try to do something different from a policing standpoint. I started the first neighborhood policing program in Toronto. I recruited officers from across the service to come together in teams of 4, and I assigned them into the 20 most vulnerable, victimized, and marginalized communities in the city. And I asked them to do 3 things. I asked them. I didn't tell them. I didn't point at my shoulder and my rank and direct them. I asked them to do 3 things. Number 1, when you go into those neighborhoods, I want you to go in there and prevent crime, not enforce the law. Crime prevention was their primary mandate, not law enforcement. Now, don't get me wrong. Enforcement is still an important part of policing. There are some very bad people who need to spend time behind bars. But enforcement, overused and abused, becomes a negative impact, a very costly negative impact on the lives of human beings in those communities, and it does affect the lives of the officers who are overusing it as well, too. Those officers, I asked them to do another thing. When you go into those neighborhoods, find a community-led organization who are doing good things in those neighborhoods and join them, support them. Under their leadership, support what they're doing. Bring your resources and your energy to bear on that. Find your own Marcy Brown and Trust 15. And the third thing I asked them to do is I told them that they would be measured on 2 outcomes: their ability to improve public safety in their neighborhood, and more importantly, their ability to improve public trust with the people in those neighborhoods. A year later, I visited every one of those 20 neighborhood officer teams, and I heard the same story over and over and over again. I heard when they went into their neighborhoods in the first few weeks, they were met with distrust and, quite frankly, sometimes disrespect. I heard that after a few weeks with efforts on both sides of the equation, they started to talk to each other, listen to each other, hear each other, see each other, feel each other. And once it got to that point, they found the compassion to discover common ground and common purpose. And then they started to work together, to share information together, to empower each other to create new solutions to long-standing justice and social problems. And they had amazing results. Let me tell you about a very simple one. The officer on the screen there is Sergeant Chris Lausch. He led the first neighborhood team I found and assigned into the Dixon Road community. Sergeant Lausch and his team took a long time to build up trust in that community. It took effort on both sides of the equation. Eventually, they found a group of Somali women who were trying to build a library inside the apartment complex in order to provide after-school homework program space and reading materials for the young people. They helped to fundraise the money. They went out and got books donated. They helped to build the library itself along with the community groups. Yes, they did some enforcement. They had to arrest some gang members in there. But after 1 year of those combined efforts, they reduced homicides from an average of 10 homicides per year for the previous 3 years. 10 shooting homicides, all involving young men, for the previous 3 years, down to 0. 0 in year 1, 0 in year 2, and 0 in year 3. Now, every one of you know there's a social cost to a homicide, but I'm not sure how many of you know that there's a financial cost. In 2014, Public Safety Canada did a study, and they determined that the average homicide in Canada costs taxpayers, you, me, us, $5 to $6 million for each homicide. Now just take the numbers that we saw in 3 years in one micro-community in the middle of Toronto. Average of 10 homicides per year for 3 years. That's projected over the next 3 years, potentially 30 lives that were saved, 30 families that were saved from burying their kids. And for taxpayers, for those of you that matter, around dollars and cents, somewhere in the range of $15 to $18 million. Money that could be reinvested into public health, public education, social services. Why not just build an actual library? I've given you some examples about urban policing in Canada's biggest city. But do these examples actually apply in rural communities across Canada? This is Dale McPhee, a good friend of mine. He was a police chief in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, a small town in the middle of prairie land. He was a private sector entrepreneur before he became a cop, and he brought that entrepreneurial mindset to looking at problem solving. He researched best practices from around the world, and he found that hub service delivery models in the health industry and other social sector industries were really good at solving complex problems. So he built the first police hub in Canada, right in Prince Albert. Now, it's based on a simple premise. You have a crime, every crime is underpinned by social issues: poverty, health, education. You can enforce the hell out of the crime and not actually solve the problems. So let's see if we can actually try to solve the hell out of the problems and let the crime take care of itself. And so he brought an unusual group of suspects around the table to work with his cops: public health, public education, local not-for-profits, civic leaders from every stripe and every background. After 3 years, they had reduced violent crime in Prince Albert by 37%, and they had saved taxpayers over $13 million. It's a small population of less than 90,000 people. That $13 million could go a long way. Dale McPhee then became the Deputy Minister of Justice in the province of Saskatchewan. He did a seminal analysis on the criminal justice system, and he found that 1% of the people in the Saskatchewan criminal justice system cost the system 60% of the funds. 1% cost 60%. Those of you in public health, I think those numbers resonate with you. He did a further analysis on that 1%. And guess what he found? 80% of the reason why they were in jail, mental health and addictions. He went to Premier Brad Wall and he said, "Brad, you don't have a crime problem in Saskatchewan. You don't have a justice problem in Saskatchewan. You got a health problem in Saskatchewan. And you know what else? We could redirect potentially hundreds of millions of dollars out of the downstream justice system into upstream preventative programs in public health and public education and get a bigger social and financial return on the investment for our taxpayers." The last story I want to tell you about is an international story. 2 weeks ago, I was in Lisbon, Portugal, at a global summit on smart cities. And I was part of a group of international thought leaders, police officials, private sector leaders, and we were trying to figure out not just how to make cities smarter, but how to make cities safer. And we started talking about a phenomenon called the Bogota experiment. Bogota, Colombia in 1995, the center of the Colombian drug cartels, one of the top 5 most violent cities anywhere in the world, the heart of the international drug trade, elects a mayor, Mayor Mocas, a former professor who had a platform where he said, "We can turn ordinary residents of the city of Bogota, Colombia, into super citizens." He was a bit of a crazy character. He thought that you could bring different people from different parts of civil society together, and with a little bit of creativity, a sprinkling of humor, you could come up with creative solutions for very complex and vexing problems. Justice problems, crime problems, social problems. As an example, on average, Bogota experienced 1,300 traffic accident deaths per year. 1,300 deaths. In a city of 200,000 people, that's a large ratio. You take your life going into your hand, you take your life in your hands going on the streets. And he found that the majority of those deaths took place within intersections. So he went to the colleges and universities, and he brought actors out of the arts programs and dressed them up as clowns and put them at the high accident locations to direct traffic. Well, I guess in 1995 in Bogota, clowns directed traffic better than the cops did. They reduced traffic accidents by 50% in 1 year. They saved 700 lives in 1 year. They tackled firearm homicides next. They found that the majority of the homicides took place in licensed premises, bars, and entertainment districts involving too much testosterone, too much booze, and access to weapons. They brought in the local entertainment owners, private sector owners. They formed 7,000 community groups, mostly led by women. They changed the operating hours of the bars and the way they served alcohol, and they allowed the women and their teams to go into the entertainment district to modify the behavior of that testosterone-driven male crowd. Within 1 year, reduced the homicide rate by 70%. We're talking about the saving of thousands of lives. Now, what's the common element in all these stories? First thing is courage. Courageous leaders from all walks of life worked with other courageous leaders from all walks of life and came up with creative new solutions that were customized to their local problems. They challenged the status quo. All of these changes had immediate positive impact that were sustained over the course of time, that did not require the hiring of more police officers or the increase of government budgets. None of them required mass surveillance or mass arrests. All of them were done outside of or irrespective of electoral cycles, and they all had a long-time impact on their communities and the lives of the people that lived there. Now, of all those commonalities, the most important one is courage. The courage to start with yourself and challenge yourself. The courage to challenge the status quo, whether it be the culture of your community or the nature of your organization. The courage to take calculated risks, because every one of those people took a risk, a personal and a professional risk to overcome resistance to change. The courage to do what's right. They were self-disciplined. They made self-sacrifices, and they provided selfless service to their societies. And they united to include. They didn't divide. They came together, even with people they didn't like and probably didn't trust. And they did something big. They made a big difference in policing and public safety. Now, before I finish my comments, I want to share a personal thing with you. I left the Toronto Police Service last February, and I joined the private sector. I stepped off the public stage. The conditions of my departure were such that I didn't have a chance to say a proper thank you to the tens of thousands of people in this city and across this country who worked courageously with me to make policing and public safety better. So before I step off this stage today, I want to send a message out to anyone in the audience here today and anyone in the audience out there who helped me. I want to say thank you. Thank you. Policing is important, critically important, in this city and in this country and in any democratic city anywhere in the world. We know what it takes to make good policing and good public safety. Good cops working with caring citizens and courageous civic leaders coming together for customized solutions to solve their problems. We know we have the tools for success in that formula right here in this room and in the audience. And we know that we can make real change now. The only other thing that we know is that there are no more excuses. Thank you.